while the web of darkness grows. Jesus suffers through his trial as the herald rooster crows. Peter speaks his third denial. Shadows lengthen into night.
Lifted high upon a cross, perfect lovings pierced with nails, all creation grieves its loss, as the very sunlight fails.
Shadows lengthen into night.
It's
You
shaky.
good? Well, it'll be all right.
Good evening. Tonight is an ending. Any story worth hearing has an ending. The beginning of the Christ story is something that we celebrate every year. We begin in November by anticipating the birth of Jesus. On the first week of Advent, we light a single candle, one tiny light in the darkness. On the second week, we light 2, the third 3, the fourth 4. And on Christmas Eve, we light the last candle. It's a big one right in the middle that represents Jesus Christ, the light of the world, which we then pass around to all the room. It's a beautiful way to begin that story. Light growing and growing over the course of a month. It's meant to remind us of the way of God in the world. God reveals more and more of the divine love to the world. The world grows lighter and brighter as God's love illuminates the world. That's what God does. It's a beautiful beginning. Tonight is an ending. On Good Friday, we snuff out the candles one by one. What takes us an entire month to create, a lovely glow, we extinguish in a single hour. It's an ugly way to end a story. The beginning of the Christ story is about God bringing light into a dark world. The ending of the Christ story is about humanity destroying the light. God's love being beaten back, shaded over, blotted out, and eventually completely extinguished. That's what humanity does. It's an ugly ending. As the lights dim around us, may we see more clearly the truth about ourselves. Some part of us yearns for the light that comes from Christ, and yet there is a part of us that desires to kill the light and to live in darkness. Our faces may bask in the sun, but our shadow is just on the other side. Hear the words of Jesus. You will all become deserters because of me this night. Come, those with courage, and face the journey into the darkness.
Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and agitated. Then he said to them,
I am deeply grieved, even unto death. Remain here and stay awake with me.
and going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed.
My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want.
Then he came to the disciples, and he found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So you could not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Again he went away for the second time and prayed, My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.
Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said,
Are you still sleeping and taking no rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners.
When it comes to the end of the story, we have this remarkable ability. We fool ourselves, and we're incredibly good at it. We read about betrayers, and we listen to the words of warning about Peter's denial, and we fool ourselves because we tell ourselves, we are not Judas. We are not Peter. Whatever sinner has the hands that Jesus is being betrayed into, it's someone in this story. It's not us. Some named character. They are the sinner. Did you hear how many times Jesus speaks to all of the disciples? He talks to Peter one time. He speaks to Judas when Judas gets there, but over and over again, Jesus pleads with his disciples to stay awake and to pray with him. He has to do it several times because they keep falling asleep. We are good at fooling ourselves. Judas brings the cops. Peter lies in Publix. These disciples abandon Jesus in his time of greatest need, but we would never, right? Let's tell the truth tonight. With all that is broken in our country and our society right now, it would be utter nonsense to think that Jesus isn't begging for this bitter cup to pass. Our Lord is no less grieved and agitated today than he was in the garden all those years ago. And the truth of the matter is, in another few weeks, we'll just go back to sleep. We've been doing that for decades. The truth is that we could put an end to all of the dark pageantry that we see around us. If we don't do it, if we close our eyes and just go back to sleep, then what does that mean about us? It means that the sinner's hands belong to you and me.
Would you stand and sing with me? Oh, the deep, deep love of Jesus, vast, unmeasured, boundless, free.
"Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priest and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. At the hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Judas betrays with a kiss. He indicates his master to the waiting crowd of armed thugs with an expression of affection and respect and honor. His choice of betrayal is a kiss, which is a dramatic betrayal, to be sure. But as long as we're being honest tonight, let's open our eyes and really see the darkness. One man alone is not the betrayer. Sure, Judas is dramatic about it, and he has an equally dramatic turnabout later in the story, but he's not the only betrayer. Read the last sentence again. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Every single one, betrayers to the last man. That's the truth. It would be foolish to read all and then just excuse ourselves out the back. We weren't there, after all, but we know better. We have seen the world gather its forces, amass its arsenal, and manhandle the Prince of Peace. They abuse our message of grace and love. They seize the name of Jesus and they make it just another weapon in their campaign of power, and we say nothing. We let them do it. We back down and we wave our finger at them when we're far enough away to not be seen anymore. Honestly, we may not have Judas's flair for the dramatic, but we know what we are. Betrayers.
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before all of them, saying, "I do not know what you're talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, he denied it with an oath. "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath. "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
Peter was warned. Jesus tells him directly, just hours before, "You will deny me 3 times before the sun comes up." Peter just can't imagine that it's possible. After all, he's Peter. He's the rock, right? Sure enough, he denies Jesus 3 times in a row, with some cussing thrown in for good measure. We wouldn't, though, right? We wouldn't deny knowing Jesus. We wouldn't with words. Jesus said, "Love your enemies." And what do we do or say about the people who vote for the other political party? Jesus said, "Let the one without sin cast the first stone." But we all know that certain sinners are worse than others because we don't let those kind into our churches. Jesus said, "Sell all you have and give it to the poor." And we comfort ourselves by saying, well, he didn't mean that literally. We wouldn't deny Jesus with our words, of course not. We don't have to.
O sacred head, thou
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You say so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" All of them said, "Let him be crucified." Then he asked, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." Then the people as a whole answered, "His blood be on us and on our children."
Of all the pieces of this final dark act of the Jesus story, this one is the most damning of our current cultural context. There are powerful people who know just how to make the system work for their benefit, and they are willing to go to any lengths to make that happen. They lie, they spin, they posture, and leak just enough information to suit their cause. They know just how to whip up a mob and aim them at their dark purposes of power and manipulation. And most of all, they know how to wash their hands in public. The most suspect line in the whole story is verse 25, when this mob of rioters declares, "His blood be on us and on our children." That's the only part of this story that strains belief, because we just don't see that very often. We see a lot of hand washing, but we rarely see the admission of guilt. We're more likely to hear, "It wasn't my fault. I was just doing what I was told. I was just following the crowd. I was only upholding the law. I was towing the party line." The truth is that we love spectacle. We revel in these violent delights. We crave the chaos and the pageantry of violence. But we also make sure that we don't stand out enough to be blamed for it. The truth is that they only accept blame when it's a mob, not an individual. We are fine with hurting people, or shaming people, or shunning people, or letting people suffer, as long as we have the protection of the crowd around us. Come to think of it, I probably should have titled this homily "Cowards." That would have at least been more honest about us.
Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters. They gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. And after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross.
garden still and deep. Those he has to watch and pray, heavy laden fall asleep, weary from the anxious day.
Shadows lengthen into night. Deeper in the garden's chill, Jesus kneels to pray alone, wrestling with God's holy will, crying out, let it be done. Shadows lengthen into night.
All too soon the silence rends with a crash of club and sword. Judas still received as friend, with a kiss betrays his Lord.
Shadows lengthen into night. While the web of darkness grows, Jesus suffers through his trial. As the herald rooster crows, Peter speaks his third denial. Shadows lengthen into night.
Lifted high upon a cross, perfect love hangs pierced with nails. All creation grieves its loss as the very sunlight fails.
Shadows lengthen into night.
And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among them by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests also, along with the scribes and elders, were mocking him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to, for he said, I am God's son. The bandits who were crucified with him also taunted him in the same way. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m.
You may be wondering what the temptation is here. It says tempters right there in the title. We may have a hard time seeing it. It's certainly easier to see the cruelty on display. Thorns twisted into a joke of a crown meant to prick the ego of this pretender king. Words of derision from the demented parade of onlookers and the jeers of the powerful calling Jesus to task to prove what he says about himself. If you really are the Son of God, King of the Jews, if you really are going to raise up the temple in 3 days, then let's see you prove it. And there it is. That's the temptation. All the cruelty, all the mockery, all the torture is meant to provoke Jesus, to tempt him into doing something right here, right now. Jesus got it right when he said, they know not what they do. They really don't. They don't understand that they are wanting Jesus to follow in the same old pattern of might makes right and a show of force and all of that. If Jesus did that, he would cease to do it God's way and instead take up the mantle of the enemy. Power and might are the ways of darkness, not the ways of God. What about us? It's hard for us to resist the allure of a powerful person. They dress to impress. They speak convincingly. They play hardball. They deal in absolutes and insist that they are the only ones who can solve our problems if we will just submit to it. We are tempted to follow such people. We really are. And we tempt others into becoming those kinds of people. We invite this. We reward this. We tempt this every time we choose to look away from who God truly is. The way that God chooses is to lose and to suffer and to die. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. And then he rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Jesus suffers. Jesus dies. Jesus is buried, but not in a tomb of his own. It is the tomb meant for another man. Do you remember whose tomb it is? It's yours. Jesus doesn't have a tomb because he's not the one who earned one. Jesus isn't the deserter who abandons those who are in dire need. We are. Jesus isn't the betrayer who sells out friends and companions and anyone who matters to us so that we can make a buck or get ahead. That's us. Jesus isn't the denier that claims to have never met us or not to know us when it's inconvenient or not to our advantage. We earned that. Jesus isn't an accuser or a conspirator or a rioter, and he's certainly not tempting us to a way outside the will of God. We are. And as such, we dig our own graves. But we're not the ones who have to lay in them. Jesus is the one who does that. The man in the story buries Jesus in his own tomb, but the truth of the story is that each of us does that. We do it through our inattention and our willful distraction. We do it through our pursuit of gain and power. We do it for nothing more than convenience. We would rather bury Christ in our own tomb than to stand out or to stand up for what is right. This is the end of the story. It ends in the darkness of a sealed tomb that we shut with our own hands. There is no light anymore. We made sure of it. The truth is clear now. Now that we're in the dark, we have all become deserters and deniers, betrayers and accusers. It's us. We are the darkness. We are the sinners in this story. It is an ugly ending. And we wrote it ourselves.